Stephen here, Misfit Ministry. I just realized as I was going to start editing the recap video that I forgot to record me reading through Revelation 13 first, so I'm going to read that now and then we'll continue to last week's Bible study. Revelation 13, verse 1. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea, with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its head. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it? And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Also it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on the earth will worship it. Everyone whose name is not written before the foundations of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword must he be slain. Here is a call to endurance and faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence. It makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. It performs great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to earth in front of people. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. The number is 666. All right, now on to the study. Enjoy. So this is where first of all, this is one of the most mucked up chapters of probably the entire Bible as far as, trying to understand. But this is why it's dangerous for us to start getting literal about anything, because where does that stop? We're now becoming the authority of what's literal and what's symbolic and what's imagery, and so for us to go into it, if we take it as symbolic imagery, which is, that's what apocalyptic literature is, that's what Revelation is, then we can start to, okay, where's this pointing to? Where's the Old Testament references? How do I understand this in the full Bible scope, which is how we should approach anything in the Bible, but especially when we come to hard scriptures like this. And so, but I always write up a big thing to break all this down with. Yeah, well, so we're going to get there, because one thing we have to understand about Satan, it's just as important for us to, as much as we understand God and research, how to know Jesus more, we need to understand the enemy too. And so that helps actually alleviate fear. The more we understand Christ and the more we understand the enemy, you're like, Satan is a copycat. He's a fraud. He is the deceiver, right? He doesn't create anything. He just perverts what God has already made. And so all this talk about wound and still alive, and it's like that's God's, or that's Satan's way of being like, see, I did things like Jesus too. I was wounded, I almost died, but I'm still here. And it's so easy because there's so many things in this world, and as we come to the Bible, we're like, Satan, he's so petty. So Revelation 13 is a key chapter in the book of Revelation describing 2 beasts that play central roles in the end times. Here's a detailed breakdown along with full scripture references, various interpretive ideas, and potential applications. And yes, there's even application for all this craziness. Historical critical interpretation. So John, and then I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with a diadem or crown on its horns, and blasphemous names on his head. So
Do we think there's an actual creature coming out of the sea with 10 heads and 7 horns? No, because that wouldn't be appropriate to approach this like that with a literal sense. We know that the dragon and the beast are on the same team because of what is said later. And so we know this is something not good. Okay, the beast is never, I don't think there's any reference to Jesus or God in any way in any kind of beast language. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's strictly for bad things and people. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, and its feet were like bears, and its mouth like lion's mouth. Okay, we're trying to get this picture of it's powerful. It's a affordable, conquering creature, right? Which could be a nation, which could be a person, right? His throne and great authority. And to it, the dragon gave his power. Yeah, so the dragon, which we found out in the last chapter, is the devil. Okay, so the dragon is Satan. Satan giving his power to this beast and his throne and great authority. Verse 3, one of his heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but his mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. So I see that right when I read that, I thought, man, that's the world today. The world's fascinated with evil, unholy things, right? It's not even hidden anymore. Back in the day, there was the subliminal messages, and now it's just plain. Let's be as evil as we can because people love it, right? And so those kind of things make it come together. Be like, oh, okay, that's making more sense. Verse 4, and they worshiped the dragon, the devil, and he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? People give Satan way too much credit, right? We look at God and Satan as these, opposing forces at grasp for our souls, and it's nonsense. It's like, no. Satan's a created thing. The war against God and the devil would be like an ant rolling around on this table and me being like, boop, okay, you're done. But what is Satan's ultimate desire from the beginning?
To be like God.
To be worshipped, right? I'm glorious, I'm beautiful, I'm powerful. I want a little taste of that, okay? And so that's his goal throughout. Right? What does he do when he tempts Jesus? Takes him to the top of the mountain and says, look at all this. Look at, I will give this all to you. All you got to do is bow down to me. The root of your desires, right? All I want is to be worshipped. Even things like, so back to that, the pettiness of Satan and his unoriginality. One of his nicknames is the morning star. Jesus is also called the morning star. God is light, right? He's the light of the world. He is the light of, he is light opposed to the darkness. What does Satan call himself? The angel of light. He's just constantly wanting to present himself in a way that is glorious and fight against it. Verse 5, and the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words. Sounds about right. And it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. Again, I think a symbolic number, right? If we're given a little number like that, 42 months, okay, it's a while. It's not forever. It's not years. There's another place that says, a couple times it says 1,260 days. You're like, okay, any kind of like bad things happening or anything good, like that's not that long. We're only a few years. There's another part where one of the churches it says for 10 days you will be persecuted greatly. It's like, I don't think it's talking about a literal number. Because again, where do we draw that line? I think the Bible uses apocalyptic literature to say for a small amount of time or for a period of time. It's going to be longer than 10 days, but not as long as 1,260 days. Verse 6, it opened its mouth and uttered blasphemous against God, blasphemes against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling and those who dwell in heaven. All right, so just utter insults to God and everything holy. Verse 7, also it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. Okay, so this is the second time we get that allowed language. Okay, who do you think's giving him permission? God. God's always in control of everything all the time, as ever uncomfortable that makes us feel. Because there's a lot of bad stuff that goes down. We're like, really, God? How do we reconcile that with God being good all the time? I mean, I think in its most simplistic form. Now, how do we reconcile? Okay, because at that point, I'd be like, well, then God is just as bad as Satan. He's just more powerful, right? So then how do we understand this? Because these are the kind of truths we can't just be like, oh, no, don't talk about that. I don't believe that then. Right? That's the place we usually land. And because it's really uncomfortable to be like, wait a second. How do I wrestle with this tension? God's in control of everything, and there's a lot of evil stuff that goes down, and Satan is technically a tool in God's hand, and Satan is the worst. So what's going on here? Never shy away. There's nothing to be bashful of with this. With
It's all
God.
for us.
Yeah, again, this isn't first tier stuff. You can believe God's in control, but whatever, he's allowing things to happen. That's the language you usually use. He's allowing. I like to go all the way. Nope, he's planning everything. Everything is in his will. I'm sorry, because that sucks. There's a lot of just really bad stuff.
Yeah.
However, here's the thing. The caveat is God is good all the time. It doesn't matter what happens and what he's planned and what he's allowing, because he's working it all for good. The most evil thing that has ever happened in the history of the world, what is it? Not the Holocaust, not abortion, the crucifixion of Christ. The one and only actual innocent person who didn't deserve it, hanging on that tree, taking on all the sins that he never committed, right? The most evil. Satan having his way 100%. Party in whatever realm Satan and his angels party. Not in hell. They're not in there. The hell isn't theirs. That's God's as well. And yet, what did that accomplish? The greatest good ever known. That's the climax of history. That's what makes Christ alone worthy to open the seal of salvation. That's the only thing that's going to assure our salvation in heaven forever. And yet it had to be the most evil thing that has ever happened. All part of God's plan. If we can get on board with that, just like as simple as if we can believe Genesis 1:1, the rest of this is easy. Right? So yes, there's bad things that happen. And yes, God's going to make it right one day. He's going to rain down. This is part of why we can be excited about the vengeance that he's going to take on all the evil throughout all of history. Rightly so and justified 100%. But as of now, he's letting the story play out. I think to see how dark darkness can get and how glorious and light he is. There's a lot. And we're talking about these infinite, and actually Revelation does a great job. We're constantly going back and forth. This is what's happening in heaven. This is what's happening on earth. This is what's happening in heaven. This is what's happening on earth. And we get these contrasts, and I think it's a beautiful picture because we are trying to grasp very big things with a very finite brain, and God's doing it. He gave us a book, and he even came down to hang out with us for a while. You guys got to get who I am. That's really hard to do. When we're talking about infinite, glorious creator, God that's that big, it's like, okay, how do I help this ant understand calculus? That's going to be hard. But God is smart enough to figure it out, right? You can start understanding 1 + 1, this ant gets it. And that's probably all we're going to get in this life. Some of us get 1 + 2. 1 + 1 is where we stop, usually. That's fine. That's enough. Now you know me. And when you get up here, you'll understand a lot more. We're still never going to get him fully. That's how glorious it is. We'll be face to face with him with what seems to be a million years, and we're still going to be like in awe of the mystery of this awesome God. Are you starting to feel like that bigness at all in your mind of like God? Because that's the place we should try to get to like every day if we can in some way. Because that's the kind of stuff that changes us. Beholding just a glimpse of a little bit more of God's glory every single day. That's the life-changing stuff. So let's keep reading. Let's find out. Because I'll explain a lot more when I open this thing up. I just thought I usually break down each verse in this, but I didn't just realize I didn't do that. So, and all who dwell on the earth will worship it. Everyone whose name is not written. So everyone will worship it except for whose name has been written from the foundations of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. Okay, so we've heard about that, right? The book of life, written in the book of life. Lamb's the book of life. Again, do I think there's an actual book with names written in it? Probably not. There could be. Cool. Doesn't really matter. The point is, we are eternally secured with him if we are truly his. And those who are truly his are going to be steadfast, even if it means unto death. There's a gun to your head. Renounce Jesus, worship this other thing, or you're dead. Right? Honestly, I think that's a lot easier to stay steadfast to than a life that it looks like is coming for those who are not killed and just have to endure this life where I can't buy, I can't sell, I can't provide for my family. I'm staying true to Christ. That seems a lot harder than to be like, let's just go. Bye-bye. Verse 9, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. There it is. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword must he be slain. But honestly, I think that's really saying kind of what we were talking about earlier too, where it's like God's saying it doesn't matter what happens to you guys here. Like this is why you must stay steadfast, because you were already victors. You were already seated with me in heaven. This is just something that we're going to go through. Life's hard enough anyways. And so you'll be with me one day. And that's all that really matters. Here's the explanation. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. Don't worry about it. Yes, you could be shackled up. You could be burned at the stake. Many other saints were before you. I will be with you, and ultimately you have me forever. Then I saw another beast rising out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. So that's a perfect, I think, image, right? If the dragon represents Satan and this beast is speaking like Satan, I think ultimately it's just coming out self-glorification, right? Worship, turn your eyes from Jesus, and this is the real one you want, whether it be pointing to himself or the dragon, I don't know. But speaking like Satan means, blasphemes. 12, it exercises all the authority of the first beast in its presence and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast. Okay, so everyone's pointing to the first beast, whose mortal wound was healed. And so a lot of people, we'll get into this later, but Antichrist, the Antichrist figure, if potentially that is just one person, then there's this thought behind him coming into power, military power. This one world government's going to ensue. He's going to create world peace. He's going to seem, it's going to be hard for even true followers of Christ not to like him. Okay? Charismatic, powerful, probably tall and handsome, all the things. And world peace now, this guy's the guy. And then he's going to be wounded or potentially even killed and come back to life. And then he's going to say, I'm the savior. Yeah. So like that's kind of been the main understanding or kind of, breakdown of what this part means. But it could be that, and it could be either a whole nation or, rising up. Or it performed great signs, even making fire come down from heaven to the earth in front of people. And by the signs, see, at this point too, with all this aliens talk going on too, I even start to incorporate that in, because I believe aliens are demons, because at this point, there's almost like there's too much proof to deny alien activity, but they're not extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional. They've been here for thousands of years. They know how to make stuff. They're in the physical world. They can do whatever they want. And they're very smart. They've been around a very long time. So I wouldn't doubt if they have things that fly around in the sky. That's not an outrageous thought for something that is able to physically be here and create. And you know what I mean? But that's just my own fun little idea of things. And by the signs, okay, allowed to work. Oh, but the fire from heaven, it's like, you see these like, things and beams from heaven, UFOs or something. It's a funny thought. Presence of the beast, it deceives those. So we're in the middle of verse 14. It deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast. Okay, there's always been this image. What's one of God's greatest commandments? Do not make a graven image of me. No, nothing can, what's the big deal about that? Like, why, God? Why can't I just, set up this thing that represents you that I can just be like, every time I look at it, I'd be like, God, my cross necklace, man, just bring me good luck today. Why is it so bad for anything to represent the Father? Nothing can represent the Father without diminishing his glory. And part 2 of that is that's one of the glorious things about, again, the Old Testament being just fantastic, is we get why God does certain things. All these like main critiques we get about God, like God is a sadistic dictator who killed, the whole nation's children and babies and everything in the Old Testament. Like, I don't want to follow a God like that. How is that a God of love? And what we realize is there's so much that goes into these stories, so much patience from God. But part 2 of that is and obviously that's hard to say, because I believe every false religion is powered by demonic activity. That just makes the most sense. Every religion worships, or at least back then, worshipped an idol. Like that represented their God. And what does holy mean? Being set apart. God is holy, holy, holy. You do not worship me the way that those pagans worship their false gods. Okay? So there's more meaning than just one thing. Yes, it diminishes. Yes, you can't make anything that would accurately represent God, especially because God is just spirit. There is no physical aspect of the Father. He will always be spirit. Now, I think that's another glorious thing of the Trinity, is we get Christ in still bodily form that he was raised with in heaven to be our friend right there with us. What a cool, and I still don't know what the Holy Spirit's role is after that. Like maybe he's like the light of the place, just hanging out. I don't know. They're making images now. So, again, Satan just being Satan, let's make images and force people to worship it. Verse 15, and it was allowed to give breath to the image and of the beast, allowed, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. So that almost sounds like God gives this image life, or God allows Satan to give this image life, which is really weird. Which symbolically, I don't know what that even could possibly point to.
Satan just loved that.
Bro, I just thought about all this AI stuff.
I don't like any of that.
What if this bringing life is this AI coming to life and, oh my goodness. Anyways. But again, it's like as soon as we start getting scared in any kind of capacity like that, like, oh no, it's like, bro, we have God. We're good. And again, this is where we get all the post-tribulation, pre-tribulation, all these different ideas of like, when are Christians going to be taken away out of this madness? And again, it really doesn't matter. And we are victors already. Ephesians 2 says we are already seated with him in the heavenly places. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing I bring up a lot, the already and not yet dynamic. God works outside of this time. He's not confined by our time that he created for us to live in. And so when we enter into that realm, it's just a totally different thing going on. And so there's a mystery there, but when Christ saved his people that were already chosen since before the foundations of the world, he raises up to heaven, and we're already there. That's how sure our salvation is, and there might even be some kind of spiritual aspect to that as well. Who knows, but that's amazing. Also, verse 18, also it causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, even using that language that we get from Paul. There are no slave or free, Greek or Gentile, right? We are all one under Christ. It's another perversion. To be marked on the right hand or the forehead, here we go, mark of the beast, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is the name of the beast and the number of its name. Okay, now to take this literally, saying no to a tattoo of 666 on your forehead or your hand is going to be a pretty easy thing to say no to. That's not what it's going to be. The mark of the beast isn't a chip in our hand either. It's not. Now, unless that chip is brought on about saying this is the only way that you can buy or sell, and you must serve and pledge all your allegiance to this other thing, that's different. Right? There's not going to be tricking us out of God's presence. There's no tricking us out of salvation, right? It's going to be wholeheartedly, we know we're either choosing Christ or choosing something else. Antichrist, what that really could be understood as well, it's not just against, but it's instead of. It's instead of Christ. Because they want to be worshiped. They want to be Christ. They want to be the ones. So they're not anti being worshiped as God. They're anti, not that, us over here. Instead of that, we are the ones that can offer you bliss. Yeah. And so, no, it's not going to be 666. 666 is a number. And actually, does your Bible say that, actually, mine has written out the number is 666. Is yours the same? Because I don't know, maybe it's not in this part of the Bible, but there's other places where it says the number of the beast is 666. And so it's like, if we're going to get literal, then that's a 600 and a 60 and a 6. It's like, well, we got to be careful of it. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And so, yeah, we can take and run with that as far as we want. But let's see what I have right here. Let's get the different main interpretations of what that can mean. Many scholars identify the first beast with the Roman Empire, particularly under the reign of Emperor Nero, whose name was numerically associated with 666. Makes a lot of sense. Do we know anything about Nero? So I believe this is the one we've been talking about, that this is the depravity of and the hatred of Christians, to light his garden or to light his amphitheater where he'd like to ride his horse. Yeah, he would impale Christians on poles and light them on fire. So that could be the light for him. Okay, so that's the kind of persecution the church was going through. And oddly enough, too, When the church is being persecuted, that's when it flourishes. When it was made, I forget the year, when King James actually, when it became the state religion, that's when it starts to just dwindle and kind of die out. It's like we flourish in persecution. It's like that's when Christians, I think, really run to Christ, say, gee, we need you, and then God shows his power, not just us. Because as soon as something becomes so like the state religion, what ultimately happens? It's man run, it's religion, not that connection with Christ, not that loving each other, being that light of the world, it becomes watered down. It becomes,
When everything is good.
Yeah. So that's the historical critical interpretation. Futurist interpretation. The first view sees the beast as future rulers, with the first beast representing a future antichrist figure, and the second beast as a false prophet who supports the antichrist. Because there's the antichrist, and then not the witness, but it might be the prophet. I can't remember. The mark of the beast is seen as future an economic system that forces allegiance to another antichrist. Another one, 3, symbolic or idealist interpretation. The beast symbolized enduring political and religious powers that oppose God throughout history. The focus is on the ongoing spiritual struggle between God and evil rather than the specific historical figures. So that's more of a big, broad idea of it. Preterist interpretation, another kind of historical view. This view holds that the prophecies were fulfilled in the first century with the Roman Empire, Nero, and its emperors. The first beast is often linked to Nero or the Domitian. The second beast to local authorities promoting the imperial cult. See, we can run a lot of ways with this. And so what do we do with that? When we can read this and interpret it in so many different ways, what do we take away from all that? I always like to ask, so what? Well, okay, cool. I've got bills to pay. I got a long day of work tomorrow. That's what I care about. How do I apply this to my life? That could be another reason why it's so hard, kind of like in like this, like so many like different interpretations, because God's like, don't worry about it. I'm taking you way far before all that, that would actually make a lot of sense to me. I don't hold any kind of, pre or post trip. I still haven't landed anywhere. But let's see, I wrote some applications down. Let's see, endurance and faithfulness. Believers are called to endure persecution and remain faithful despite trials, as emphasized in Revelation 13:10. Okay, we see that that's really, other than the revelation of Jesus and his second coming, the main point of Revelation is, saints, hold fast, be steadfast, be faithful, hold on. And we don't have to do this by our own power. Our own power is junk. Okay, we do this by the Spirit who lives inside of us, right? From God himself. Number 2 is discernment. Christians are encouraged to exercise wisdom and discernment, particularly regarding false teachings and deceptive practices. So it's why we need to be in the Word as a whole. So when we're hearing something bad, like we were just talking about, right? The gospel is offensive before it is redemptive. If we're wise in that, then we're going to hear the fluffy prosperity preachers and be like, oh, junk. Ugh. Right? It just hits us wrong. But we need to know this to know what's wrong. Number 3, loyalty to God. The chapter challenges believers to examine their ultimate loyalties, whether to God or to worldly powers. It's good to check our hearts. Do we love Jesus, or do we love what he does for us? Is Jesus enough, or do we need his stuff? I'm sorry, I want his stuff more often than not. God, why isn't this happening? This seems good. I could do a lot of good with this extra whatever. Are we just happy with Jesus all by himself? It's a good heart check. Awareness of spiritual warfare. Understanding the spiritual dimensions of political and religious powers can help believers navigate their faith in a complex world. Everything we see going on in the world and everything that has ever happened in this world, good or bad, it's all spiritual. People want to separate church and state, and people don't want to bring, talk about politics or religion. It's like, bro, it's all together. You think politics are absent from demonic forces and evil trying to, Satan knows he can't ultimately take God's children, right? His true chosen children. But he's going to do what he can to distract, to give us hard hearts, to, make us less joyful as possible. And so it's why we need to be actively seeking Christ, abiding in Christ, right? If you're the little kid holding dad's hand, safe next to dad, that's the good place to be. Nothing's going to hurt you, right? That dad will die for you, your child. Bear comes up, he's going to be holding you up here, and let that bear attack everything else but my kid. Okay? But we start wandering away, now we're open to all kinds of dangers. So God's saying, stay close. Courage in witness, number 5, last one. Like the saints in Revelation, believers today are encouraged to be courageous in their witness, even in the face of persecution or death or being impaled on a stick. Revelation 13 remains a profound and challenging text with diverse interpretations and significant applications for Christians seeking to understand their faith in the context of world events and spiritual warfare. But like in Daniel, there's Daniel 7, Daniel's visions of 4 beasts, which represent kingdoms. It talks about that, and the 4th beast particularly is terrifying and powerful, 10 horns. This vision parallels this in chapter 13. Daniel 2, the vision of Nebuchadnezzar's dream interpreted by Daniel, also deals with successive kingdoms culminating in dividing a kingdom with 10 toes and links. We get all these pictures. And again, this is all apocalyptic literature when they talk about this stuff. So that's what I mean when the hearers of this or the readers of this originally would read this, they would just know. They knew their Old Testament and they knew exactly what they were getting into. I like to liken it as like, if you like an action movie or you like scary movies, you go to see a scary movie, you know what you're getting into. You expect certain things. And so reading a letter that you know is written apocalyptic, you're like, okay, I've got to get my Old Testament view on. I got to remember these old books that were written, old scrolls that we all know. Okay, so now we're reading this. Oh, yeah, they're piecing it all together in their minds, understanding it way more thoroughly than we are even able to, I think, today. So, it just goes on. We got Daniel 8, Daniel 2, Ezekiel 28, 2 Thessalonians, 1 John. And so the whole Bible really talks about Christ coming back, the tribulations that are going to hit this world, whether we're here or not. Just that, I think, that final hour of God being like, okay, it's time to not just turn all these, not all this evil into good, but I'm able to just now bring the good. I'm doing away with all the evil. The Bible talks a lot about like the end times being like the world, the earth, and its saints. It's like the childbearing pains. When you start to feel those pains, that's the countdown of birth. And so I think we've been in these childbearing pains for a long time. The earth is feeling it, we're feeling it. And God's just like, draw close. The time is near. That's been true ever since he wrote it down.